Hello and welcome to Fire in the Belly. Today we have myself, Mighty Pete, and we are joined by the Devin Durrant. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you, sir.
Hello, good morning, Pete. Good to talk to you. Thanks for taking time with me today.
Listen, it's great to have you on, Devin. It's always interesting. I know this is going to be a great conversation. So, really, just to give our listeners a bit of background, so Devin Durrant is the owner of multiple real estate-centric companies and a retired NBA player. Over his professional basketball career, he played a season with Indiana Pacers, briefly with Phoenix Suns, and later with several European basketball teams. Devin was a consensus All-American at Brigham Young University, as well as a two-time academic All-American, and was voted one of the top 10 Utah college basketball players of the 20th century. Wow. He has been named one of the 50 most influential sports figures in Utah by Sports Illustrated. He was inducted into the Utah Sports Hall of Fame in 2016. Devin has been a real estate investor for over 25 years and has guest lectured in real estate courses at Brigham Young University. As an investor and speaker, Devin developed a way to look at adding value to properties and saw the close ties to adding value to all aspects of life in both personal and professional arenas. An inspirational public speaker, Devin has spoken to thousands of groups around the world over the past 40 plus years on a variety of topics from athletics to education and investing to parenting. Currently, he speaks on the importance of moral values and how they impact many areas of our personal lives, as well as our companies and organizations. Devin lives in Provo, Utah, with his wife, Julie. Together, they have 6 children and 16 grandchildren. My God, okay. You can learn more about Devin as a speaker, seminar leader, and values consultant at thevaluesdelta.com. And we should add to that now, you are also an author as well. Let's throw that in the mix as well, right? Welcome to the show, Devin. It's great to have you here.
Well, thank you, Pete. Look forward to talking to you.
How does it feel just listening to all your accomplishments? How does that feel, first of all?
It always feels a bit awkward to go through that list, but it also is a reminder of how fortunate I've been, how blessed I feel, all the many associations and experiences that have enriched my life. So I'm a very grateful person.
Wow, well, that's beautiful. So tell us, Devin, what does fire in the belly mean to you?
I love this question. As I thought about it, really, I think the shortest summation for me would be my fire in the belly is creating Delta. I'm sure we'll talk more about that, but in its simplest form, how can I make a positive difference in the world? How can I touch someone's heart and give them a desire to be their best self? And but that's really the bottom line of the book is how we can create Delta in our own lives and in our relationships and in our businesses and organizations.
Well, so give us the definition of Delta then. Is that the gap between what we are and what we could be? Is that a fair?
Yeah, I like that. You know, Delta has different meanings. A delta can be a landmass, but a delta in its simplest form, really, it's a financial term. And my oldest son introduced me to the term. He had a finance background and spent time at Google and Facebook and Intuit, and now he's helping me with my company. And one time he used the term delta, and I said, what's delta? And he said, delta is simply the difference between two numbers. So the delta between 10 and 3 is 7. And so I've taken that term and applied it to our lives. Delta in its simplest form is a change or a difference. So how can we make a change or a difference in our lives or in our companies? And that's the really the theme of the book, is in small and simple ways, making changes or creating a difference, creating a delta in our lives that's positive and can bless those in our sphere of influence, ourselves, or like I say, in business or other ventures.
Let's give the book a proper introduction. So it's called The Values Delta, a small and simple way to make a positive difference in your personal and professional life. So that's great. And in terms, and so talk to us then about values. So I love the Delta piece, about sort of creating the difference there. And values, what are they for you?
Yeah, as I thought a lot about this, this has kind of been an 8-year project and plus, but simply our values is how we define ourselves. So in the book, I say, I would describe myself as a person of blank, and each person fills in that blank. So we all self-define our value set, and I call them priority values, because what are the values that I want to focus on at this time in my life? And in the book, I outline 8 different values that have special meaning for me right now, but they're a little bit different from core values. With core value, I think it's something that never changes, but a priority value may be something that right now, this is a priority to me in my life. I want to focus on it and how it impacts things that are important to me. And so it's a dynamic list of our values. So in a way, it's a way to describe yourself. There's really no end to the list of values that you could probably come up with to describe yourself that give you a unique meaning. And like I say, I give 8 in the book as examples, really to lay a foundation or a pattern that others can follow. They can select some of the same values that are important to me in my life, or go down a different path and outline their values. And then really in the book, again, there's an exercise there where you can choose a value and then how that impacts something you value. For example, one of my values is cheerfulness, but I think I can be more cheerful. And how would that impact my employees? Or how would that impact my relationship with my daughter if I make a conscious effort to be more cheerful? And so that's the beginning of a path that I go down and to try to, again, come back and create delta, or create this change or difference in our lives, and how that impacts those close to us and beyond.
That's really interesting. So, I mean, you have maybe the delta of who you are, and then, as you say, who you make the effort to be, as you say, to have the impact on other people, right? So how do you assess that then? How do you judge whether that's genuine, that it's not inherited, or it's not, it's a temporary fix or whatever? And how do you sort of, I don't know, I'll let you answer the question.
No, and it's an excellent question. And the way I do that, again, in the book, I offer what I call a report card. So in the States, as you go to college, let's say, and you're graded on a scale of 0 to 4. So an A would be a 4.0. And so in this case, the book, there's a report card, and sticking with this theme of one of my values is cheerfulness. I want to focus on that and maybe be a little less ornery, or a little less unpleasant. And so in the beginning, I might say, okay, this is one of my priority values. And I think, maybe I'm a 3.0. Maybe I give myself a B on this report card that I control. But for a week or a month, I'm gonna focus on this, and I outline different ways to do that in the book. And at the end of this period, I'm going to give myself a grade again. So that's how I'm going to measure it. It's No one else has to be involved. It's all a self-assessment. And so at the end of a week or the end of a month, I might say, you know, I have done well, and I've noticed it's improved my relationship with my daughter or with my employees. They seem more comfortable around me because I'm not so quick to be critical of them, and I have a more cheerful nature, let's say. So at the end of that time period, I think, you know, I've made a small improvement, but I'm still not where I want to be. So my grade is, I'm going to give myself a 3.5. And so using the term delta again, the delta between 3.0 and 3.5 is 0.5. And that should be celebrated. Even if it was a 3.2, let's say, I'm recognizing in myself that I can be a more cheerful person. I'm more pleasant to be around because I made a focused effort on a particular value and how that impacted people and that are close to me. So then at that point, I may say, I want to keep working on this particular value, or now I want to shift to something else, which may be the value of creativity and how that impacts my coworkers. So it's an ongoing process where I'm always self-assessing and seeking that to create delta, that small delta. You know, that's the fire in the belly for me, is how can I do that in my own life, and how can I help others do that and find those small increments in our lives that can bring greater joy.
And is there any particular area where you've noticed the biggest change from, you know, because what I'm hearing here is almost like it's like a self-mentoring, right? You know, try this. it's possibly the opposite of like law of attraction, you know, we're saying, well, ask first, do it, then believe it, or then receive it, and then do it, then believe it, right? So you say, I'll try this for a while, see what happens, test drive it. Yeah, it's for me. No, it's not for me, whatever, right? And then you review it afterwards. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I like that approach. You know, that's my invitation, is come do a test drive. See if you can create delta. See how it impacts you individually. See how it impacts those that you associate with on a daily basis in a work environment or another environment. In the book, I begin with two stories, and one is about a woman named Michelle that I meet on an airplane, and these are fictional stories to make a point. And we go through this exercise of identifying your values and then identifying what's important to you, what you value in life. So two different uses of that term value. And she gets the idea of how that can be helpful to her in her law profession and with her relationship with her children. And then I outline a different example of a guy named Rick, who's a president of a company. And he shares this idea with some of his department heads and how it impacts the corporate culture, but how it's also has a positive effect on the bottom line of the company. And so that through these stories, I lay a foundation and give examples of how they might use the principles in the book and the tools in the book, including these report cards that I mentioned, and hopefully to find some small improvements along the way.
That's really interesting. I mean, and that's, as you say, that fictional story about the lady on a plane, and you know, we're saying, well, what are your values? How do you test that? Because there's an expression I'm always curious about, and it's saying your voids are your values. You know, well, for some people they are. I'm not saying that, let's not say everyone is, but sometimes the voids, the things that you didn't have, are suddenly things that you value later on in life. But then when you get those things, you go, actually, that's not really what I wanted. I was just trying to fill the void, right? So is there a method? Do you approach that at all? About how do you say, well, I know I said I wanted these things, but actually I don't really want it. And when the chips are down, it's not my thing. Is there any way of testing it, do you think?
Yeah, I think that the test really is, I tried it did it make a difference? And there's nobody outside measuring for you. It's really an internal process as far as individuals go. But let's say you operate a small business. Again, take it out for a test drive, and once the test drive's over, you can again, did we create delta? Did it make any difference? And my attitude is, the principles that I outline in my book, they'll work for some, and they won't work for others. My invitation is simply try it, and if there's a positive outcome with one value, try it with another value, and apply it. For example, in a small business, let's say, you can say we're going to focus on punctuality. Let's say, that's going to be one of our values. That's a priority value because we've been struggling with this, and so we emphasize that, and we find that our employees are more punctual, and as a result of them getting into the office in a punctual way, simply an example, over a month period, we noticed that sales went up by 2%. All right, so we've created positive delta. Hey, maybe this would work. Let's try it with the value of service. So we're going to emphasize service for a period of time. And we find that through these efforts, there are certain things that we can measure, positive delta that's created, that's very easy to measure, say a sales number, and then other things that we can't measure, that maybe people are a little bit happier in the work environment because they are experiencing greater success. So it's hard to measure, hey, are you happier? And that's the process. So again, if the positive results are evident in one form or another, let's keep it going. And with values, there's really, this is something you could do for the next 20 years if you set your mind to it in different environments. Or maybe it works for 6 months or so, and now we're going to move on to something else.
I mean, do you tend to suggest a sort of a trial duration, for people at least give it a whirl and see? I mean, or is there, is there sort of a metrics of saying, well, at least give it a fair trial, right?
Yeah, the way I outline it in the book is the report card is set up for an 8-week period. So it gives you an opportunity to prioritize 8 values, and then also select 4 to 6 things that you value. For example, how's this going to impact my family? How's it going to impact my friends? How will it impact my business? And these are all things that again, we identify by creating a list of, okay, here are the things that I value, here are my values, and then through an 8-week period, how does this value impact that item that I value? How does this second value impact this other item that I value? And there's a simple report card format where you can highlight that, measure it, and so through this 8-week process, by the end, then you can see the delta that was created, and then make a decision. Is this something that I want to continue with, or I'm done?
Yeah, it's sort of as you say, it's a good sort of taster period, right, to see where it is. Was this new to you? You're saying over the last 8 years, or that, or was this new concept, or is it something that you've actually found this sort of try and test and change? Has it been present in all of your life, really?
Well, frankly, I've been thinking about stuff like this since high school, and I would give a lot of credit to that to my high school basketball coach. He got me thinking about these kind of things, and so that was 40 plus years ago. But in these recent 8 years, I've been thinking, how can I present this in a very simple, easy to understand, easy to use format that might be helpful to people? And so that's we've gone through a lot of iterations to try to take it from something that feels a bit overwhelming to something that's very easily understood, easily attainable, and easy to get results, and recognize that even small improvements should be applauded and celebrated. We've got enough negativity in our lives and in our world that this is an opportunity to have some achievement and feel positive about the efforts that we might be making to be a little bit better.
No, that's true. I mean, what was your initial intention? What did your Devin want to be when he grew up? What was your original plan? Was it basketball all the way along?
Well, when I grew up, sports were a very important part of my life. I loved baseball, loved football, basketball, and so in my little world with my neighborhood, we just played the sport that was in season as the calendar scrolled through, and I just enjoyed sports. I had my failures along the way, and I had some successes to keep me going. But that's when I really started to understand different values: the value of hard work, the value of teamwork, the value of self-discipline, and that's where I started to lay the foundation. And like I said, I had my high school basketball coach, a man named Jim Spencer. He was a John Wooden enthusiast, and John Wooden is one of the great coaches in America. And so a lot of Wooden's philosophy was teaching his players about the importance of values. And that came through from my high school coach and a junior high coach by the name of Rick Bolus, and how these men helped me lay a foundation in my life and recognize the importance of the values that we choose and how they impact our lives in so many different ways. But that was the beginning of my thought process.
It's interesting because it sort of almost brings up a question of, nature versus nurture, right? How much of you was destined to be, that basketball player, and how much of it was the nurturing that went on with the people around you, right?
Yeah, and on that note, with nurture, again, I outline a story in the book where, as just a young boy, I would work side by side with my father. And I loved working with my dad. And one of the reasons for that is, even as a young boy, he would, at one point in our different work projects, he would say, Devin, having you help me is like having a man. And I was smart enough to know that I wasn't helping much, but it sure felt good to have my dad, express his confidence in me and allow me to work side by side with him, so I could see the benefit of work, and feel of his love and his confidence. And that certainly got me set on the right path about how I felt about myself, to have those kind of interactions with my father as a young boy.
Did you take after your father? Who you like, your mother, your father, or a bit of both?
Boy, that's a good question. I see so much of myself in my mother, and then there are traits from my father that I embrace. So hopefully I'm a good combination, but I've been very fortunate to have just magnificent parents and to benefit from what they taught me as a young boy and throughout life.
Were they into sports at all? Was it, sports in the family? Was it there, or is it something that started with your generation?
Yeah, both my parents were athletic too. My mom was a skier and golfer and enjoyed other sports, and my dad always wanted to be a basketball player. He had an older brother who was actually a tremendous basketball player in that era. And everybody expected my dad to be the kind of player that his older brother was. And He never felt like he measured up to that. But he benefited from that older brother, which was the same as my experience. I had an older brother who was 4 years difference in age, and I would have never amounted to much without the benefit of my older brother, what he taught me, and the torture that he put me through by pounding on me on the basketball court. So basketball was something that really I just enjoyed. It wasn't something that my father emphasized that much. He was always there to shoot baskets with me, but not a lot of pressure from dad to succeed in the sports world.
It's always interesting, isn't it? You know, how some people have, you know, their parents are heavily involved and heavily sort of driving, and then others it's, you know, it's the other way around, you know. And have you any thoughts? Which would be your preference? You know, it's, should people find out their own path, or, you know, what's it all about?
Well, I certainly believe in people finding their own path, and I'm always hesitant when I see too much parental involvement. So I think there's a balance there. It can be a real positive thing, but sometimes I believe that parents become a little bit over energetic in their attitude towards their children as it relates to sports and their success therein. And so I go back to what I said earlier, just finding the right balance of encouraging our children, giving them opportunities, and then allowing them to grow at their pace, and choosing the path that best works for them.
Well, it's an interesting point. I mean, do you think that, you know, people, you know, when they're looking at their own sort of values delta, that, you know, they compare it to what they would expect other people to do, and then compare it to themselves. And then, of course, sometimes we're a bit too enthusiastic. We overestimate what we can do in a short time and underestimate what we can do in a long time, right? So you've now got 3 or 4 different aspects that you try and pin a value to. And it's like, well, which one do you actually go with, right?
Yeah, no, that's why I try to present a format where everybody makes that decision for themselves, and rather than somebody say, hey, this is what you need to do, and this is how you need to do it. It's really a self-guided tour to you know, become a better parent, become a better employee, become a better business owner, become a better coach. And here's a method where you might be able to achieve some of the results that you're striving for, that you may have a bit of a struggle along the way.
It's that aspect, isn't it? I suppose is, you know, having a mentor, having a coach or someone in your life to help you see, you know, whether it's your big brother beating on you or whether it's somebody to inspire you and sort of maybe nudge you in the right way and saying, you know, you might want to try this, right? You know, has mentoring been a big part of your life? Or, I mean, I suppose that's you know, that's built into the sports world and culture, right?
Yeah. I've been very fortunate to be a mentor to younger people in different settings. But the flip side of that is I have had just some remarkable mentors in my life that have helped me at different stages of life and given me direction and inspired me through their examples. And, you know, I've always tried to keep my eyes wide open and watch other people and try to emulate the qualities that I see in them that have brought happiness and achievement and fulfillment in different ways. So it's, again, I've been very fortunate in that respect.
Talk to us a bit then about real estate. I mean, you know, you've 25 plus years in it. You know, how did that come about then?
Oh, wow. Speaking of mentors, when I could years ago, really in the 80s, I could sense that my basketball career was coming to an end, and had a chance to read a book by a man named Robert Allen. And that inspired me. That opened my eyes to what the possibilities might be in real estate. As a young man, I grew up mowing lawns and taking care of, doing different yard care jobs. And in high school, I would clean office buildings into the night. And so these different kind of jobs, I think, prepared me for real estate, where I could maybe go buy a single family home and mow the lawn and plant some flowers and paint the house and clean it up, and then make it available as a rental property, or sell the property and hopefully make a little bit of a profit and move on to the next project.
It's interesting, and that sort of, so you're adding value. It's a mixture of adding value, right, but also adding potential value, or showing people potential opportunity, right?
Yeah, that was the theme that I spoke on a lot. Was in real estate, as you look at properties, the question you always ask is, how can I add value? And so as a young man, I was thinking, how can I add value to myself as an athlete? How can I add value to my team? And then professionally, thinking about how can I add value to this apartment complex? And so that was a theme that I spoke on a lot, and it was part of the genesis of this book. Was how can we all add value to different areas of our lives? If you can add value to a single family home by painting the walls and mowing the lawn and putting in new carpet, how can I do that in my own life? What values can I emphasize or focus on that would help me to be happier, help me to find more satisfaction in life, and help me to find peace in my different pursuits? So over time, it's all come together, and I've tried to outline some of these things in the values delta.
For going through, I suppose, I mean, were you, like many people are accidental landlords? They inherit it, they get together with somebody else, and there's a spare house or whatever. I mean, was your journey into property, was that sort of almost backflip like a lot of people, or was it intentional, as you were saying? Because the likes of Robert Allen and that sort of inspiration, and that sort of bigger question, what's it all about, or where am I, what's future possible? What was your sort of introduction to it all?
Yeah, for me, it was quite intentional, because after reading Robert Allen's book, and I was also inspired by a man named Wright Thurston. I heard him speak one time, and they just outlined a vision of how real estate could be a vehicle to provide for your family, and also create some freedom in your life so you could do other things, pursue other things. And I love that message. I was inspired by that message, but I had a full-time job, so it wasn't something that I could just jump into quick and easy. So after I concluded my professional basketball career, or maybe I didn't conclude it, I was invited to move on to other things through various rejections. And so then I went to work for WordPerfect Corporation and got to experience corporate America and that lifestyle. And but in the back of my mind, I knew I wanted to get involved in real estate. I saw that as a great vehicle. And I know we're on common ground, Pete, for what you've done with real estate. But so then eventually I started buying about my first rental property, and then a second. And then I had an opportunity to join with a dear friend, and he had a lot more money than I had, but together we partnered up, and he was just a terrific partner. And we were together for 4 years, buying different real estate assets. And then I bought his interest out. He was very kind to me, and I've been flying solo with real estate for about the last, I don't know, 25 years. That's been that path. So initially it was intentional. I knew where I wanted to get, but it took some time for the different pieces to fall into place. And once they did, it's been a wonderful life. It's created a lot of freedom, flexibility, and an opportunity to interact with some wonderful people along the way, and hopefully create delta in their lives, and both financially and just with their well-being.
What's your core strategy, Devin? I mean, I know for me, I'm buy and die. I just hold. You know, it's, you know, how long's a lifetime, right? But I know it sounds like you were starting off, it was more the flip strategy. You know, you buy it, you add value, you do something, you represent it, and you know, present opportunities, and then you sell it on, right? So is that something that continued, or do you have a core strategy?
My core strategy, I would say, is I want to enjoy business. And that's really not much of a core strategy, but that's really the approach that I've taken. With some properties, I've purchased them and hopefully added some value, and then have held them long term. And other properties have just been kind of quicker in and out type properties. But it's I enjoy the process of finding properties and negotiating prices and fixing up and resolving problems. I think that's a great way to create delta, is simply resolve a problem that the property might have, and then some we hang on to, and again, some we sell, hopefully at a profit. And so it hasn't been a fixed core strategy. I've been kind of all over the map, but along the way, it's been a very enjoyable journey.
It's like a lot of people, I suppose. 25 years is, you know, it's one, if not 1.5, depending on what your view in the current situation is in terms of, you know, recessions. We've seen, you know, variations in, you know, you know, sort of, well, for us, pre 2007 bust, and you know, the global recession, I should say. We've seen pandemics, we've seen all sorts, right? So property does amazing things, you know, and it has amazing potential. So yeah, it's always interesting. I mean, is there any particular part, or I suppose this is maybe a general question, what are you really good at, and what are you really terrible at? I mean, are you aware of your strengths and your weaknesses?
Well, I would say, I guess at this stage of the game, my strengths would be a little bit on the accounting side. I enjoy numbers. I enjoy working with numbers, and that's my role in my company today. I get to be a little bit involved on the numbers side. My weaknesses would clearly be as it relates to maintaining properties and building and construction, that side of it. They do let me push the broom a lot. I'm good with the broom, and I'm good at trimming trees and pruning bushes and sweeping, but that's as far as it gets when it comes to true property management and construction skills. So I usually get to pushed aside so I can go work on the numbers, while other people do the skilled labor and really make a difference, create a lot of delta in our company.
That's great. I mean, and I mean, I asked that question not to catch anyone out, but it's just sometimes knowing your strengths, knowing your weaknesses, and knowing it's saying it's just not my thing, or I might be, you know, might be my passion, but it doesn't mean I'm good at it. And knowing then if numbers are my thing, that's great. Then let whoever is passionate about building maintenance or building whatever, let them do that bit, So getting out of your own way and doing the things that sort of bring you passion, bring you love. It's you accept that. That's going to be key in anyone's life, right? It's you know.
Yeah, I have to share one more strength if I can, Pete.
Yeah, sure. Please do.
I think one of my strengths is recognizing talent in people. And I've been very fortunate with the people that I've worked with over the years, and I've been able to see that this person has so much to offer. And as they've come on board, one thing I've tried to do is bring out the best in them, try to create Delta in them and help them as they prepare for their futures. Generally, in what I do, I hire younger people. Oftentimes they're in college, and hopefully through the experience of working together, they are better prepared to go out and succeed with their own small business or whatever they choose to pursue as a result of working in my company. So that's one thing that's very important to me, is helping these younger people prepare to be able to succeed in wherever their employment path takes them, and as parents and in their relationships. And I find a lot of satisfaction there. And I, like I say, over the years, very fortunate to work with just some magnificent people who've helped me be successful. But I hope at the flip side of that is they've benefited from our association.
Talk to me about that. You talked about seeing the talent in others. I mean, what is it a sense you get? And it's always interesting talking to mentors and people who, support other people. It's sometimes we sort of saying, well, listen, I could really see you doing this, or do you see just the potential and the drive in people? Or there's a mixture of things, right? Of how we intuitively know or feel about other people.
Yeah, very, very well said. Very well said, Pete. And I think I think it's something, it's almost another sense that develops over time as you interact with other people, and the spirit can prompt you different ways. And I figure I've hired maybe somewhere between 200 and 400 different employees to help me with my business. And every now and again, there's not a good fit, but for the most part, things have come together very well. And I think over time, it is something that develops where you can recognize in people, this person will thrive in the environment of our company, whereas maybe for another person, they're going to be much better off pursuing a different path. But over time, you begin to see that in other people and how you might be able to help them.
Do you tend to, through that hiring process or that, that mentoring process, are there, there's people talk about profile and there's people talk about, sort of common values, whatever. Is there certain sort of almost non-negotiables you find, when you're either employing or working with other people?
Yeah, I think the non-negotiable really, Pete, is we want to work with cheerful people that are kind, that are friendly. And a different way to say that is what is the first impression that this person gives off? After 60 seconds of interacting with this person, how do you feel? And that's the non-negotiable, because so much of what I do in my business it relates to sales and how I feel as I interact with this person. I believe we buy feelings, not products. And how do I feel as I interact with this person who was a stranger 30 seconds ago, but now I feel comfortable with them. So I think that's the the big non-negotiable as we hire in my particular circle.
And if we were to take your book and then to take the staff or the people that you work with or work for, would we see a correlation? As you mentioned there, cheerfulness, kindness, friendliness, etc. Are we going to see a correlation?
I think so. I think two of my priority values, one would be optimism and one would be gratitude. And so we try to generate that feeling of good things are happening and there are more good things to come. And we see the positive in people and see relationships coming from those kind of things. And then at the same time, we acknowledge how grateful we are for our customer base and for those who, in a way are investing in us by choosing to be, in many cases, choosing to rent from us, how grateful we are for them. And part of our gratitude is hopefully offering a superior product. So in the end, they feel like that was money well spent and I got a fair return for the services that were offered. And so, yes, the answer to your question is yes, that hopefully our values come through and my priority values that I outline in the book are clearly a part of my company. But at the same time, we've also identified, company specific values that we emphasize and the things we value. So yes, the principles in the book apply to me individually and to anyone individually, but at the same time, they can be applied to a group of people in an organization or company or team, etc.
How much for you? I mean, because it's always interesting. People describe values in different ways. For some, it's like, it's how you turn up, or it's the blueprint in which you decide to do things, or it's your set of commandments, right? And this is my operating structure, right? So I mean, well, first of all, I'll ask you that. I mean, does that resonate with you? Is that what sort of values are for you?
Yeah, it really does. What resonates with me is there's a lot of different ways to define our values. And so one thing I've tried to do in the book is outline our values as one word statements, and it's, I am a person of blank, or we are a company of blank. So you're filling in that blank with really one word, where others might say, our value is that we strive to be customer oriented. And so it's more a statement rather than a single word. And I'm fine either way. Really, one of my purposes is simply, let's have more conversations about values. And you choose how you want to define that. But I think there's benefit in simply saying, who are we? Who am I? How do I define myself? And how does that impact things that are important to me in my life? If I define myself as let's say my value is work and hard work, and so how does that impact my employer or my spouse or my friend? Because that's important to me, that I'm a hard worker and I give my best effort. And so I think through the simple exercise of thinking, what are my values? How many of us have gone through that exercise to just, how do I define myself? And how is that definition impacting things that are meaningful to me? Through that exercise, I think there is benefit. I think we create delta through that simple exercise, and it may be a short-lived thing, or it may become a lifestyle. For me, it's a lifestyle. I'm always thinking about how I can create delta for other people. Where are my weaknesses? What do I need to prioritize where I might be able to do a little bit better as an individual, as a husband, as a father, and as a business owner?
Is there anything in particular has been, you've consistently done throughout your time? I mean, whether that be, I'm going to suggest, goal setting, meditation, visualization, etc. I mean, is there anything in particular that's always stood by you the entire time, through your careers and through, where you are today and even up to today, having, being a successful author?
Yeah, the constant for me really was, again, from turning back the clock back to when I was a young boy in high school. The constant for me is how can I improve? And how can I improve as an athlete? How can I improve as, my parents' son? How can I improve as a disciple of Jesus Christ? I have a strong belief in Jesus Christ, so that's been a key element for me. And I'm always striving to improve in different areas of my life, and that's been the constant. What I've learned over time and as an adult is I think we tend to become what we think about, and so I'm a big believer in trying to focus our thoughts in positive directions. And for the last 10 years, I have a weekly scripture, and simply by having that, it's almost like having a good friend who's encouraging you to do good things. So that there's so much garbage and noise in the world that one of the things that I've focused on is trying to channel my thoughts in positive directions. And one way to do that, for me, that's been helpful is to have that scripture always handy. I post it on Twitter, but I've also have another Twitter account where I want to just post uplifting quotes about different values. And I think by simply taking a few seconds out of our day to read the words of God or read the words of inspired women and men, I think that positive delta is created in small ways simply by filling our minds with uplifting thoughts, the things that elevate and bring light into our lives, to balance out some of the negativity that we're so constantly exposed to.
It's very true. And to have that faith and that belief, I think is, it's quite strong, and it's great. And it means a lot I hear that a lot from people, that whatever your creed or faith is, everyone's choice. And but that is a consistent, factor, I think, as well, and for you, you mentioned inspiration there. What does inspire, Devin?
I find inspiration through really by watching other people, through accomplishments, through their words, through their actions. And so I'm always looking around trying to find inspiring moments, inspiring people, inspiring thought. And I very much enjoy the pursuit. That's why one part of the reason I wrote the book is hopefully that through my words, I might be an inspiration to other people. It's a way of giving back because I haven't been inspired. I've been the recipient over the course of my life of being able to associate with some wonderful people that have lifted my spirits, lifted my sights, and have been so inspirational. So maybe I can have that impact in some small way in the life of someone else.
It's great. To be of service and to help others it's a massive, it's a calling, and I think it's a purpose for many people as well. Tell me this, when did, because you mentioned about this almost coming into your, 8 odd years ago. I mean, was the intention to write a book, or was this a bigger question? What's this all about? And we're trying to, run it through our sort of run it through our gray matter to see what it's about, or was the book always the intention?
I, well, years ago, and I guess in the early 2000s, I had the wonderful experience of writing a book with my father. It was entitled Raising an All-American. And so Dad and I worked on that book. And what I realized two things. Writing books is very difficult. It's a very difficult process and takes a lot of energy and focus. But I also realized how satisfying it is, that it forces you to find clarity in your thought and to put it down on paper in a way that hopefully is clear for other people, that can be helpful to them. And so I had opportunity to, like I said, to talk about real estate and how you might add value in that world. But that evolved, and as I started thinking about how can we add value to other people, to ourselves, to our organization or our team or company, that's when I started kind of sifting through these different ideas. And like I said, writing a book takes a lot of work for me. I think for others it may come easier, but through that process, it's a wonderful learning experience, because one of the things you have to figure out is, how do you feel about this particular topic, and how are you going to express it, and how are you going to share it so that it might be helpful to other people. And so little by little, the different pieces came together, and at times I'd think, this is just takes too much time and effort. And at those points, my wife would give me loving nudges to say, keep going, and other people would encourage me. And so again, it's very satisfying. It takes a lot of work, but in the end, I'm pleased with what's available out there, and now hopefully it will be a benefit to other people, and some positive delta might be created in their lives.
What have you learned about you from this process, Devin?
That I still have a lot of growth that needs to happen. I still need to develop more discipline, and I need to control my time better. And I've also learned that I want to help people. I enjoy helping other people. I enjoy helping other people see themselves in a more positive light, and to see that the potential that they have, and to see that they can achieve, and that there's a lot of reasons to be positive. And this is one simple path that people could embrace, that hopefully would bring more joy to their lives. And I find a lot of satisfaction. I've learned that about myself, hopefully earlier in life, but this has just been a re-emphasis that there's a lot of joy and satisfaction can be found as we strive to help our neighbor, and be a blessing that to those who we associate with closely, and even to the stranger that we might meet along our path, that we can bless their life in one small way or another.
I mean, for you, are you where you're supposed to be now, do you think?
My answer to that question is always going to be no, because again, I think there's always a little bit more that you can offer, and there's always some progress that needs to be made, and there's always maybe something we need to repent of, and and change and try to do a little bit better. And so that'll be my constant striving is, yeah, I'm in a good place, but maybe to make it better is to help other people find that good place in their lives.
Well, what is the nicest thing somebody could say about you, Devin?
The nicest thing, maybe my first answer to that is Devin Durrant is a kind person. And I think that would be one of the great compliments, that he was kind to me, and they felt my love. And I think that would be a compliment that I would relish.
Are you proud of everything you've achieved?
Yes, a strong yes would be my answer to that question. But at the same time, I also recognize the source of my blessings, and anytime there's achievement, there's a story behind every achievement in life. And oftentimes those achievements that we might think are might deserve a pat on the back, really, it really is an opportunity to pat other people on the back and thank them for helping you along your path and helping you with the different achievements that you've experienced. And that's been my case. I'm, I guess, experienced enough, old enough. I'm an old timer now to recognize that every good thing in life comes with the help of other people and with a loving God that blesses us in different ways. So yeah, I'm proud and happy, but I recognize the source of goodness, and very grateful to those who have blessed my life in so many different ways over the years.
I mean, has there been any significant turning points in your life and really sort of awakening moments, if you like, that actually changed the directions? Anything that stands out for you?
You know, for me, it's been a fairly straightforward path. There haven't been any real awakenings along the way. There's just been different turns that I've taken with the help of different people. You know, I like I mentioned earlier, I had some wonderful mentors as a young man through my teen years, and I've had 5 years of my life have been spent focused on missionary work for my faith. And those have been marvelous years. And professionally, things have worked out well. One big turn along the path was when I left corporate America and became an entrepreneur. That's always a big step for anyone. But I had a dear friend to help me along that path. And that's what worked out well. And so, oftentimes we have to experience some difficult times in life to figure things out. And maybe the closest thing for me to that would have been when I was in professional sports. I would have liked to have had a 10 or 15 year career in the NBA, but I was cut from the second team in the NBA after a season of playing there. And so I had to shift from being a basketball player to provide for my family, and to, okay, basketball is now a thing of the past. Now you have to support your family in a different area. And so that was about the roughest transition that I could come up with. But even that led to so many good things, having to leave basketball behind and figure out what I wanted to accomplish in life away from the sport of basketball.
so much that's down to perspective too, right? I mean, it's, these things happen and it's your choice. How do you see them? It's happened to you or happened for you, right? So, it sounds like, obviously faith is very strong with you. I mean, I don't want to make any assumptions, but it's that thing, right? So if you can say, well, okay, this is a tough moment, but I believe there's a purpose, there's a lesson, there's a purpose, or there's an ultimate mission here, right? Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, thanks for opening that door. I think perspective, you could say, I am a person of perspective. That's a value. And how does that perspective impact so many things that are important to us? I had a wonderful mentor. His name was Robert Tucker, and he spoke often about perspective, and he in the eternal sense. So he would talk about eternal perspective and how does that impact us. And I think oftentimes our perspective is so short term, and we think, well, this happened to me or that happened to me, and it's a disaster because I'm only seeing from this point ahead a month or two or three. But if we have a long-term perspective, how's this going to impact me over 10 or 20 years, or even an eternal perspective? I think it helps us through those difficult times. And for me, as I mentioned, was trying to transition from the athlete to husband, father, provider for my family. Recognizing a long-term perspective made that transition much easier, because I think I've always recognized that sports are fun, they're great entertainment, but in the big picture, they really don't mean that much. What really matters is our families, our relationships, and how we choose to live our lives, and how we interact with other people, and how we treat other people. And so through that process, to have a long-term perspective, an eternal perspective, I think it's been very helpful and made it, I don't want to say easier, made it a bit more comfortable to manage through more challenging times.
It is. I mean, it's always interesting again, but it's like your values. How are you going to show up, right? It's some people say, well, I'll choose to look for the lesson here. I'll choose to look for the possible. I'll choose to look for this, and where other people say, well, poor me, So it's a bit of both, right? It is a bit of both. What's for you? I mean, what's on the bucket list, the love list for you there? What else is to come for Devin? Because usually authors we're serial creatures, it's like, well, if I do one, it's like, well, maybe I could do another one, right? Or maybe not just at that stage yet.
No, you're right. I've learned that about people who write books. It's hard to write just one book. I'm obviously, we're talking about what's your fire in the belly, and my answer is to create Delta. And so this is an ongoing process for me. I'm already outlining in my head, the values Delta for coaches. I think coaches are in a unique position to influence young people in very unique ways that no one else can. To be a teacher, to be a coach, you really can create Delta for people that will last throughout their lifetimes. So that one's in the works. I also want to write the values Delta for leaders. How can we be more effective as leaders? How can we share values within our different environments that will create more satisfaction for those that we lead, that will help them achieve their own success. And so we're carving that one out in my head. But those are the next two books to come down the road, with some encouragement from, again, my loving wife, who gives me just the right nudges to keep going, and in the spirit of hopefully inspiring, helping others to elevate those they influence.
It's always interesting because, you know, for some people, they say my partner will leave me if I write another book, you know, or set off on another project. And other people are going, yeah, they're nudging me to go do it, right? So isn't it amazing how we all, you know, different network around us, different drivers, different things, you know, and it's beautiful, right? You know, we just
Yeah.
different.
No, I get it too, because those kind of projects, they can be all consuming. And so we always need to be sensitive to those around us, so they're not forgotten in the midst of our all consuming projects.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Tell me, what's a bit of a guilty pleasure for Devin?
Let's see, guilty pleasure. How about chocolate milkshakes?
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Any
you know,
flavor? Where's your go-to?
oh wow, just anything we can have some chocolate and some nuts in there. That's always important. My mom used to say that it's a waste of time just to make a chocolate cookie if you don't put a lot of nuts in there. And I've certainly embraced that. So I try to eat a very healthy, follow a healthy lifestyle, and my wife's excellent at that. And so I try to stay away from sugar for the most part. But whenever I want to let down those constraints, yeah, I sure love a good milkshake or bowl of ice cream with some chocolate and a lot of nuts. How about that?
My mouth's watering just thinking about it. That's awesome. That's awesome. And leisure and pleasure for you, what does that look like?
Wow, this is always, you know, one of the things that I value is fun. And you know, fun, faith, family, friends, and fitness. So one is fun. So I'm always striving to try to have a little more fun in life. But I think people, particularly my family, they try to get me to have a little bit more fun. But I so enjoy my work that really that is my leisure. That's my pleasure. Just working. But I have two brothers who are tremendous golfers, and they've tried for years to get me on the golf course. But I just haven't been able to embrace that sport yet, maybe down the road, because I so enjoy what I do professionally that some of those pleasures, like a good game of golf, are ardently avoided by me at this point.
Oh, wonderful though. I mean, that's sort of almost the Japanese, you know, the ikigai concept, you know, whereby if I'm doing what I love and there's a market for it, a need for it, I get well paid for it, then why the hell would I stop? You know,
You know
people say, well,
that
stop
that's
working. That's because you work for a living. It's like when I, you know, live for working, it's like, well, that's different, right?
yeah, you know that's one of the things that I, if I could give a gift to other people, a lot of things come to mind, but one thing I would want to give them is just to have an enjoyable profession where, you know, it's not, hey, I have to go to work, but wow, I get to go to work today, and I get to create, and I get to help others, and I get to make the world a better place through my efforts. I just that's one thing that I've enjoyed is being excited about going to work every day, and I sure wish that for other people.
What's your learning style out of interest? I mean, are you know, would you, some people go into a dark room and a big book, or other people are practical learners. What for you is your learning style?
I That's a good question. I think it's really learning through exposure, and you know, that comes in a lot of different forms. I think the internet is a great source of learning opportunities, it's also a great place to waste a lot of time, but I think that's helpful. I love the experience of reading a book, how that takes you to a different place. And I love the inspiration that comes through reading good books. Not always just from the words on the page, but from ideas that are generated as you read the book based on promptings that you feel as you study. I think there's so much that can be learned visually through different media. And so I'm across the board on different ways to learn. I think for me, again, as I mentioned earlier, I find it fascinating to study people and to watch how they interact and watch how they teach and watch how they present things that I think a lot can be gleaned simply through observation as we go through our day-to-day routine.
No, so true. I mean, is there a book or any particular books that you would recommend for people as a bit of a must read?
One of the books I've read recently is by Stephen M.R. Covey. It's called The Speed of Trust. And he happens to be a dear friend, but what an inspirational book. We're all familiar with the 7 Habits of Highly Successful People from his father. There we go, highly effective people. And what an influence that's had on the world. But his son, Stephen M.R. Covey, he's right there with him, and his brother, David M.R. Covey, 2 excellent writers, excellent. And that was a very inspiring book for me. One of the values that for me is always going to be a priority value, but I don't write about it in my book, is the value of trust and the impact that trust has on everything that we value in our lives. I feel strongly about it, but I thought it makes no sense to try to write about the value of trust when Stephen M.R. Covey has done it in such an elegant and efficient way through his book, The Speed of Trust. And he has a new book out that just came out recently that I'm anxious to read. I've got a copy sitting on my desk here, but that's the one that comes to mind. And I'm also I love to read the scriptures. I love to read the words of God. I find great inspiration there, and so that's a habit for me.
Oh, so powerful, so powerful. So tell me, I mean, if you were to try and describe your fire in your belly in 1 or 2 words, Devin, what would they be?
For me, 2 words: create delta. And a different way to say that is make a difference and change. In what ways might I change that would serve me, that would bring greater happiness in my life? And how can I have that influence on other people to help them make a difference in their lives that will bring greater joy, greater satisfaction, greater fulfillment, and just make life more enjoyable. It starts with those 2 words for me, which are simply create delta, or another way to say create positive delta. Make a positive difference in your life and in the lives of those that you love and care about.
What's something that not many people know about you, Devin?
Well, one thing that everybody asks me all the time is how tall I am. So I tell them 6'7". So most people know that about me. What is it that they don't know about me? Probably that. Wow. Because I've been a public figure for a good portion of my life. So a lot about me is out there. because they don't know about me.
Mm.
Well, I'll just say what brings me great joy at this stage of the life of my life that I haven't talked about much in any other forum, but I'm on common ground with a lot of people, Pete, which is just how much joy I get out of my grandchildren. One of my favorite things to do at this stage of life is just to spend time with my grandchildren. I just had dinner recently with my almost 2-year-old little granddaughter, and have her feed me Cheerios. As we would alternate bites of Cheerios, and just how much fun it is to interact with these little small people and find joy in those interactions, and read them books, and spend time pushing them on a swing. Some of these simple pleasures in life, really, it's hard to describe how much joy that we can get out of just these little people, these little relationships, these interactions. And I don't think I've mentioned that on a public forum before, but sweet times. It's a great stage of life to be a grandpa and watch these little kids grow and learn and be part of that process.
Have you worked out yet whether you're teaching them or they're teaching you?
Oh, that's an easy answer. It's always there teaching me. And I enjoy every second of it.
Isn't it great to have the childlike wonderment, that sort of, the fun in the box of Cheerios. Who knew, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Such a present. It really is such a present, So many, many, many years from now, what will be put on your tombstone, Devin? What are people going to be the final remark?
I hope somewhere there on my tombstone, it might say that I was a good dad, a good husband, and a disciple of Jesus Christ.
Solid. Love it. Love it. Devin, tell us, where can people reach out? Where can they follow you, get a copy of your book, learn more about you, hunt you down, stalk you, any of the above?
Yeah, I'd invite them, come visit my website. It's thevaluesdelta.com, and values with an S, thevaluesdelta.com. And if they'll come, they'll learn a little bit more about the book. And one bonus on the website, there's a video at the bottom of the web page. It's about the value of quiet service, and it's called No Tracks. And so it's a story that my father wrote. My father's a very gifted writer, and he wrote this story years ago, and he sent it to me while I was a missionary in Spain. And I couldn't get through the story. I just teared up. It was a very touching story. So come to the website. It's an animated video. It's about 13 minutes long, but bring a box of tissue, because if it impacts you the way it impacts me every time, can't get through it without those tears filling my eyes. So come see us at thevaluesdelta.com.
Wonderful. I look forward to watching that. Is there a final message you'd like to leave our listeners today?
Yes, it's a message of optimism. There's so much good in the world. There's so many good things happening, and most of it happens behind the scenes, and certainly doesn't make the daily news. But through the challenges that we face, and through some difficult times, that there's so much good in the world. There's so much light, and wonderful people striving to become better and bless their neighbor, bless their families. And let's not forget all the beauty in this wonderful world that God created for all of us.
Yeah, optimism and gratitude, really. There's a lot there. It refers back to your book. Devin, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting today. Thank you for spending so much time with us. I appreciate your thoughts, your insights, your lessons, and I wish you all the best also for the forthcoming books as well. It's great to always be on a path and just listen, doing what you love. So what an amazing lesson. So thank you for sharing it. I appreciate you.
Well, thank you, Pete. Thank you for taking time with me, and I commend you for the success that you're having with your podcast and all that you're doing to create Delta in so many positive ways for so many people. So congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it.